and welcome to Talk the Thrones, the Ringers, Game of Thrones after show. I am Chris Ryan. That is Jason Concepcion. That is the artist formerly known as Mallory Rubin. We are live here on Twitter taking your questions, your suggestions, your theories, your eulogies at hashtag Talk the Thrones. Woo! We're gonna talk about episode 3, season 8, Game of Thrones. I think that was called The Long Night. It was a long episode. You could also call it The Night of the Living Dead. You could call it the Winterfell Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh.
It was more like an episode, I don't know, it felt like more like Aliens than it did like Game of Thrones to me in an amazing way.
Yeah.
We're gonna break it down from every conceivable angle that we can think of, including the deaths, the action, and what it all means. Yeah. Let's just go into wildfire moments, and there are some quite literal fire moments in this one. So let's talk about what everybody is talking about on Twitter and in their conversations with their friends in the living room. Jason, what was your wildfire moment today?
I think it's gotta be the Night King taking that big fat L. Arya coming out of the darkness just with a massive, incredible leap.
Yes.
Like some real like Beeman leap.
Yeah.
And taking the Night King down when he was like at the 1 yard line.
I know.
Shouts to my guy, waited 8,000 years to bring the Long Night back and got at the foot of the three-eyed raven.
Arya Stark's vert is the real winner of the
Unbelievable.
week.
Honestly, like, I don't think the comp the Night King wanted at the end was Rickon Stark, who didn't sway one way or another quite as much as he should have. Obviously, that's the wildfire moment. Nothing else is even close. That was astonishing. And yet,
Yeah.
heartache,
Yeah.
despair, tears. We lost so many people, Jorah. I'm obviously despondent. I'm a mess. And there are a lot of other people we lost. We lost Lyanna.
Yeah.
Quite an ending.
What a way to go out.
For her.
As someone who's been cheering for Darren Sproles for years, I know what it's like to see a smaller running back get hit by a linebacker like that,
man.
but that was pretty disturbing.
Yes, BERIC, THEON, Ed. All Ed wanted was for someone to burn him if he died.
I know, and
he
he
had
didn't get it.
literally one request.
I'm hoping he gets that in the morrow.
Melisandre,
Yeah.
Viserion. I mean, wow. That episode honestly took multiple years off of my life. I'm not even kidding.
Oh, absolutely. It was happening before the
watching it.
episode even started, and now Mallory is just like a quivering mess. But this is the thing, it was like there was the deaths, there was also just like the spectacle, which I think ranks up there. I arguably is the greatest achievement in the history of this show. I'm not trying to be like hyperbolic afterwards,
and
but in
possibly
terms of
television.
like, I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. And then you've got what it all means, which we're gonna get into because the stakes of this show have completely changed. I don't think I thought this was gonna end with such a definitive sort of
Night King gone.
punctuation mark.
Yeah.
Night King gone. That's insane. So let's check out the wins of Twitter. Let's see what people are talking about out there online. And we got a couple of tweets here from folks. Hashtag Talk the Thrones if you want to reach out to us. And the first tweet we get is from CJ McCollum.
Oh.
Recently defeating his own White Walker in Russell Westbrook. I love you at Game of Thrones. Thank you. Also, Alex Caruso chimes in. AC Fresh 21 says, Arya Stark with the greatest Hezi cross of all time.
We, of course, were primed for that because she switches the hands when she's dueling and training with BRAN in the courtyard. So that is excellent, excellent priming and a reminder for what those water dancing and faceless man skills we're going to be able to do.
Night King, a little too much Oberyn in his diet. Like, now I'm just gonna walk. It's been 8,000 years. I could rush up to my dude and take him, but like, I'm gonna do the slow walk.
You know what though? Consistent with his past acts.
Yeah,
like
true.
Many of his soldiers were in Bloodraven's Three-Eyed Raven Cave and could have finished the job for him, but he clearly had given a message. ISO ball.
ISO it out.
Yeah.
The James Harden of Game of Thrones.
And it turns out the refs weren't calling this. Let's get into Raven Scroll. This is where we go through the entire episode scene by scene. Now this week is gonna be a little bit complicated because there's essentially one scene. There's essentially a battle with a couple of cutaways to people in the crypts escaping the battle briefly, but we're gonna take it through this scene by scene as best we can. All this action kind of starts inside the gates. Everyone is getting into their places, and Drogon and Rhaegal are flying overhead. They got the Air Force there, and we see Ghost with Jorah.
I have to be honest.
Thank you. On your part.
I'm not a narcissistic person.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is not actually made for me. Right. Jason's like, this felt like a personal attack.
I will say,
I felt targeted.
I think, like, no shots, a waste of a resource.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Ghost is great at upfront combat. You don't need him with the frontline troops. Let's have him next to Bran.
Yes,
you
I
know,
thought he would be in the Godswood. I thought he would be in the Godswood.
Why do you need him there?
We've seen him save Sam
Yeah.
from the Army of the Dead. We saw him obviously just chow down on Rast. We saw him at the Battle of the Wall.
Yeah.
Jon was like, I need him more than I need you. We know he's a capable warrior, so I think that deploying him made perfect sense, but maybe there was a place where he wouldn't have gotten lost. And frankly, internet, please tell us if we missed something. I would honestly love to know. We don't know what happens to him or where he is.
I think
he
that's
was in
on
that
purpose,
first
though.
chart.
I think
that's
that
on purpose.
everybody that we saw die, we saw die.
Yeah.
I hope so. I can't say it. Protect Ghost, please. Please protect
Outside
Ghost.
the castle, Jon and Dany are standing atop a cliff overlooking Winterfell, and it seems like maybe they might talk a little bit about that.
The future.
Hereditary reveal, the sort of familial reveal that they had, but they don't. They get right into it, and then Melisandre shows up.
Incredible moment.
It's been a minute. She was told not to come back here. She told Davos, I gotta come back here, this is where I die.
Varys.
Varys. And then Davos immediately is like, you're about to get wiped out, girl. And she's just like, don't worry about it. I'm not gonna last much longer anyway. And then comes the first, you will meme this for the rest of your days moment of the show, of this episode that you will see tons of online. And it's also just like unbelievable filmmaking. It's like David Lean good filmmaking.
Yeah.
Melisandre lights the Dothraki swords. They all put their swords up and you get this firefly effect as they ride out to go to meet their doom.
Yeah,
basically.
whatever she was doing over in Essos, she got some strong magic and came back with it.
Yeah.
Shouts to the Dothraki. Tough way to go out for all of y'all.
Very bad beat.
All of you.
Literally, there's like 5 guys that ran back.
Yeah.
Maybe they had it right literally throughout recorded human history when they were like, we're good over here, actually. It turns out. The internet is telling us that Ghost is in the preview for next episode, that his like hindquarters, a little bit of him is visible.
Nothing to worry
I hope
about.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that shot though of the flames being extinguished.
Yes.
is
Chilling.
Also, if you thought that this was gonna be like a classic like 7-6 Bama LSU like, kind of really even defensive like chess match, no.
Yeah.
Let me just say again,
a
like
beating.
I'm not like Jon has won more battles than me. Like there's there's a lot of great strategic minds in that room planning that battle. You don't throw your cavalry in first. It's not worked. The last 2 times at Winterfell, it has not worked.
To be fair.
Ramsay threw his cavalry in first, it did not work.
Yes.
You hold that in reserve, let them come forward, throw them on the sides, and then you mop up.
Yeah.
You don't want to waste all your dudes right away.
Nobody loves Jon more than yours truly. However, and I think I'm a perpetuator of the Jon is a great commander narrative. He actually loses a lot and then gets bailed out.
Yeah.
You know, Sansa won the Battle of the Bastards. She brought the Knights of the Vale. Jon would have lost that fight, which is not something that people forget. It's just worth reminding ourselves of in a moment like this.
Yes, I mean, as Prince who was promised, he has some like really close calls and some really lucky things, and he comes out and they're like, that's the Messiah. That's
He did it.
guy right there.
Jon did it again.
Once again.
So,
Very on brand.
We get into the castle walls, and well, first I'll just say that the fight starts, and one thing that you notice straight off the bat, and we noticed it watching the show, and I'm sure everybody noticed it watching at home, is there were a lot of moments where it was like 7 whites just jumped on Brienne, and we're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And then like someone comes and like rips them all off, and she's like, oh, I'm okay. So that happened a bunch of times. There was a lot of false alarms. Brienne is wounded a bit. Dany and Drogon, Jon and Rhaegal, they rain fire. Jon spots the White Walkers on the back line. They go, and then comes this twister of snow out of nowhere, which obscures pretty much the entire battlefield for the dragons. And then we kind of take all the action inside the castle walls. And that's when Arya tells Sansa to go down to the crypts. She obviously doesn't want to do that.
No safer place.
And so this is where I thought maybe, Jason, if you wanted to jump in here, because we've got some maps of Winterfell.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
And we thought we might take a little bit of a look at what they were defending.
Sure, let's look at the battle map first, which is the plan that Jon and all the generals came up with previous episode. They had lined up they had got the little black dots and with the overhead kind of illustration of Winterfell to see what we've got here. So Dothraki in the front, again, don't know if it's a great idea. I think we saw that it was not a totally great idea. Brienne and Jaime with Podrick and the Arryn troops of the Vale on the left-hand side, Unsullied providing the strength in the middle, and then unnamed Stark troops on the right-hand side. The Dothraki, as we saw, were sent out. They got trucked in about 45 seconds.
That would be dope if the actual thing was they just they were like, we're just gonna keep riding.
So as that,
Back to the poison water.
the Unsullied really provided the meat of the battle for most of the time here.
Yeah.
Holding the line while Brienne and the Vale troops and Jaime, Jorah, everybody else kind of retreated through the middle.
Yeah.
And shouts to them because I think we lost a lot of Unsullied here.
Yes.
And then let's go to the overhead map. So the screenshot that we have here is basically from episode 1 when the two dragons fly overhead, and this is from the reverse side. So this is coming from where the whites are basically coming. So
I think real estate value may have dropped here a bit.
Pretty much. So working from the right, first keep
History was made here.
That's probably the first keep, oldest part of the castle. Then the courtyard right behind the north gate. This is where we lose Lyanna. Tough beat for her when a giant just comes trucking through. Crypt somewhere to the left. A lot of the running probably takes place in the Great Keep, which is just above the army barracks.
So that's where like the library and stuff
Library and all that kind of stuff. Armory, Great Hall, where the Hound and Arya kind of retreat to, and Melisandre is just kind of chilling there. And then the Godswood, where a lot of the action with Bran takes place. Theon losing his life, Arya coming out of the trees at the last moment to save the day.
So we've got everybody fighting out there. That was incredible, Jason. Thank you. We got everybody fighting out there, doing this sort of military retreat where they're sort of trying to protect and they're trying to like defend the people who are retreating, the Unsullied, losing numbers by the dozen. And Sansa goes down to the crypts where she's with Tyrion, Varys, Gilly, and Missandei. And outside of Winterfell, there's still this Top Gun battle going on between Jon and Rhaegal, and they're flying through the air. There's smoke, they collide. Outside the gates, they're falling back, and Jon then lands at the Godswood, and we start to get a little bit of a sense of, it was a bad plan maybe, but it did seem like it was right.
I think it was, I think some aspects of the plan were bad. That said, it's not like, unless Arya comes out of nowhere, they're not really winning this. And I think they knew just the numbers were going to tell the whole time. They're not going to win. You're going to get tired. You're going to get exhausted fighting this undead army that never gets tired.
I don't know. I mean, certainly parts of the plan were questionable, but at the end of the day, they defeated the Night King and staved off the long night and ushered in the dawn. It's hard to pick too many nits after that. And at the end of the day, there's some aspect of knowing your enemy. That's a real theme of the show.
Yep.
And I think probably part of what we're experiencing is that because we as viewers have felt some lack of understanding where the Night King and the White Walkers are involved, we're maybe not giving Bran enough credit for how well he knew his opponent there. Because he said, he's gonna come for me. And he did. And then he had tunnel vision, blinders on his sides, and Arya took him out. That's last hero stuff from Arya right there. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was an amazing turn of events because there was I think a legitimate feeling like Arya might have run out of moves there while she was when she was fighting in the hallway.
When Melisandre gave her the green eyes, brown eyes, and blue eyes, when she said blue eyes, I was like, oh, she's gonna do it.
Right here.
Yeah,
right
she's
here.
gonna do it.
Right here. That nod, so many nods to moments from the past there. I know that scene is coming up and we'll get there and revisit it, but Melisandre quoting Syrio to Arya, channeling that first moment where she really had to learn to be brave. One of my favorite lines in the story, it's different in the book and in the show. In the show, we hear Robb say it, and in the book, it's a Bran-Ned moment. But it's basically the idea from Ned where his children ask him, can a man be brave if he's afraid?
Yeah.
And Ned says that's the only time a man can be brave. And I think we saw that so effectively time and time again in this episode.
Here we go. Let's talk a little bit about how Melisandre saved the day a couple of times there, but she did it with the flaming swords. Those didn't come into that much use except to show that the Dothraki had all been killed. But she lights the trench. There was a second there where you thought she was going up with it.
I did. I thought she was going to turn herself basically into the human Lightbringer.
Yeah,
Nissa Nissa.
And that she was going to go full Nissa Nissa.
I thought she was going to be like, BERIC stabbed me and I'll blow up and light this whole thing up.
Yeah.
But still.
Lightbringer after a fashion, I guess.
After a fashion, and really an incredible display of the power and belief that she had rejuvenated in herself after leaving, because she was at her lowest point.
Yeah.
Previous to this, when we last saw her, she had failed Stannis. Yes, she brought Jon back, but had no idea really how she did it. And now she was so much more confident, and also confident in the fact that she was not going to live past this day.
It's a really interesting episode for considering the nature of forgiveness.
Yeah.
And you know, Brian Cogman, who wrote the last episode, he said something really interesting in an interview that he conducted, I think with Sean Collins for Vulture, basically where he said, like, I renounce the idea of a redemption arc. You know, people make mistakes and people make choices. And I think that the way that the various character arcs, Jaime obviously, very emblematic of that, and Melisandre and Theon certainly, gave a lot of heart to that idea and give us a lot to think about in terms of how mistakes define us and how the choices that we make after those mistakes either change the course of our lives or don't.
I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of the show's history of being a subversive story versus what the story actually required tonight, because I think when we take a step back, we're going to have a lot of notes on that. But right now we're doing the Raven Scroll. You're watching Talk the Thrones. I'm Chris, this is Jason, this is Mal. If you want to talk to us, it's hashtag Talk the Thrones. And what we're doing is going through each scene, such as there are scenes in this episode, and kind of trying to get a sense of some light in the dark and find out what was happening. So we had some crypt stuff. Tyrion was upset in the crypts and he wanted to help fight, but Sansa said, you know, no one in the crypts can make a difference in that. She said something about, like, you know, the most important thing is to be honest with each other. That was really
that we're facing death. And like, let's just really accept that.
She said, none of us can do anything. It's the truth. It's the most heroic thing we can do now, looking the truth in the face.
Yeah.
Important idea moving forward.
Yeah.
Interesting. What makes you say that?
Well, they're going to ultimately be facing the human foe at the end of this, it turns out, and we'll obviously talk about that, I think, at length throughout the course of this this emotional after show. But that means a lot of what we thought it meant. You know, Jaime and Tyrion facing off with Cersei. I think one of the cool things about the choice to remove the Night King from the story in this episode is that it sets up a really seismic Jon-Dany rift, potentially, which I'm personally, like, very hyped about.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a difficult truth to look in the face, who Jon is, who all of these people are, and what they mean to each other.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the Night King provided a lot of the messianic mythology for some of these characters, and now that the Night King has been removed, it kind of returns the show to its roots as like a political drama, as much as a military drama, but how do you divide up these 7 kingdoms? What are they worth? Let's go back into Raven Scroll, where we're breaking down the episode piece by piece. In the Godswood, we got the first of Theon's McBain speech, where he gets to just apologize to Bran, and Bran says he's gonna go now, and he wargs into ravens.
Everything you did brought you where you are now, where you belong.
Which you could say about every single character on this show, I think. What is going on with Bran in that scene? I know what he's doing, but what's the story significance here? What aren't we seeing, maybe?
I mean, it's a great question. He wargs into a flock of ravens and goes to scout the battle area. Should he have been doing that earlier? We won't question it now. That's fine. But he does locate the Night King, and then is doing what exactly? That's the question.
Because he's gone for a minute.
Yeah. Is he looking up other things that could help in the fight going forward? What is happening? Is he learning more about Jon's parentage and how that could possibly affect the rifts and the power dynamics as we move forward into the story? I don't know, but he was in there a long time, and when he came out, he seemed very confident about what might happen next.
He obviously had seen what was going to happen to some extent. He tells Theon, you're a good man. He seems utterly unworried about the Night King going for his sword, but what purpose he was serving, and whether or not he was doing a disservice to his friends and family is like a really big question here.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to process here. First of all, obviously a very literal and apt version of you will fly. You know, you will not walk again, but you will fly. He certainly flew in the moment of battle. One of the most propulsive theories and questions heading into this season, and really for many years now, has been whether Bran can change the past. You know, this question of the prior three-eyed raven saying to him, well, you know, it's beautiful beneath the sea, but you stay too long, you'll drown. Moments like where he shouted out to Ned at Tower of Joy and Ned turned. Obviously everything that happens to Hodor. And then the other bit of mythology we have there from the three-eyed raven, which is the ink is dry.
Yeah.
I have a slightly hard time believing we're finished with that.
I know, well, he's still alive.
It feels like that has to still be relevant moving forward.
Right.
And so maybe he went back and saw something that still matters. I really thought that he was going back to the original Long Night.
Same.
To find out how they ushered in the dawn. Maybe he did.
And we may find out that he did that, but I think, we're not at eulogies yet, but I think it might be time to say rest in power to one of the most long-running and infectious theories that has been around the community, which is Bran is the Night King.
Yeah.
Like, R.I.P. I think it's over, right?
I mean,
well, are they going to go back and be like, let's figure it out?
Okay. Is it a cycyclical thing? Does there need to be a replacement?
That's the thing.
That's the thing we don't know.
Is that what the mark is? You know what I mean?
But it really seems like the end of that episode really felt like the show being like, okay,
maybe.
This is the thing, and I want to get back to Ravenskull. We're going to keep getting through this episode, but I do want to say that one of the things that the show was criticized for last season was some of the convenient storytelling, Gendry running however far he ran in the course of an episode just to get a dragon to come back, all that stuff. Like the Chariots of Fire stuff was silly. I think the showrunners themselves have been like, we had to do what we had to do, but there's been 2 instances off the top of my head this season already. Tyrion's conversation with Bran last week, where he was like, tell me everything about yourself, and we didn't see it. And why Bran was under for so long when we only saw a little snapshot of his vision. So what is the payoff for those
That's a great point. I think we both really thought we were going to see something like Tyrion's ship of wildfire moment for this battle.
That he wanted that.
He had something planned.
Especially when he's like, let me out of here.
It's like, simply from a production standpoint, you don't film a scene like that, which, like you have to have camera people show up.
Scripts,
there's like makeup, there's got to be a
safer
payoff
place.
there, and what is it? So that is a great point. We're waiting on whatever that payoff could possibly be.
I think 2 things are equally true. No Avengers Endgame spoilers here, I swear. This is an Infinity War point, I promise. But that Bran sequence had a real Doctor Strange playing out the 14 million scenarios in Infinity War vibe. And maybe that's what he was doing, just playing out every scenario, trying to learn everything he can to get to the moment where Bran and the people in the Godswood and the people in the grounds of Winterfell needed to be. But given, to Chris's point, the role of cycles, patterns, the idea of the wheel plays on the show, the children making the thing that ultimately was like humanity's undoing or could have been, the pact, all of that still feels like something ripe to return to. In some ways, I think the biggest, maybe they won't explain this thing, is the spin-off.
Yeah.
The spin-off takes place during the Long Night.
Right.
They're only going to answer so many questions when they need to give us a reason, and of course, just returning to a world we love is a reason.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, we're going to go back there and learn all of these things then, so we're not going to find them out here.
Let's keep learning stuff about this episode. It's Ravenskull. We're just running through the episode right now. We're kind of breaking down different elements of this battle. The gates get breached eventually. The Whites try to walk through the fire trench in numbers. They basically sacrifice themselves to be able to walk across the trench. The Whites break through the walls, and Viserion and the Night King arrive over Winterfell. Jon follows him on Rhaegal. Jaime and Brienne and company they're trying to defend the wall. The Whites are climbing up. We get many more scenes where you're just like,
that was
my favorite characters is about to bite it.
That was extremely...
That was stressful.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just like, the filmmaking was at such an elite level, like that the tension was so ramped up that you actually lost your ability to be like, I'm not really sure like what I expect anymore, even though battles tend to have certain beats like Darkest Before the Dawn, etc. It was really impressive.
One of the things I really appreciated, especially once everybody fell back and the Whites were like pouring over the walls, was that it was clear what was happening, but it also wasn't that clear. Like it's just you could see how being in that battle would just be so confusing. Like, I've just killed this thing and now I'm turning around. Is this a person or is that a White? Like, I don't understand what's happening and I'm just swinging at stuff. That was, to your point, like incredible filmmaking to toe that line between like the confusion of battle, but also like what's happening, telling people what's going on.
And and never losing people in space. They did a bunch of like oneers with like characters running past, so there was like, oh, there's Jaime and Brienne against the wall. Oh, there's Sam about to get eaten, but seems okay.
A lot of close calls for Sam.
A lot of close calls for my guy. Whites climb over the walls into the main areas of Winterfell, and I wanted to hit this especially because this was an unexpected moment.
Yeah.
The Hound becoming basically paralyzed by fear.
Not
seemingly
unexpected, I don't think.
Yeah,
We've seen it before.
And he saw it in the fire too. I think a lot of what has happened over the last season, he seemed to see in that vision that BERIC and Thoros when they go to that house.
I mean, the reason that he's on his current arc and with the people he's with in the first place is because he abandoned his post as Joffrey's sworn shield at Blackwater because of the fire.
Yeah,
and I mean, I think it's actually an incredible part of the story that we see somebody who's supposed to be this bastion of strength that vulnerable, and it reinforces the idea that the fears are real. Like if you're afraid of something, that matters.
It's a great point. He's been looking for a way out of this life for almost the whole show, and found it, with Brother Ray and building septs and stuff, and was sucked back in by the violence endemic to this continent.
Yeah.
But has really been just trying to find a way to not do this anymore, to not have to fight in fields of fire against various soldiers alive and dead. He's not wanted to do this.
And one of the things that he asked Ray in that episode, The Broken Man, was, well, if there are gods, then why haven't I been punished?
Right.
And Ray said to him, you have. And I think that this was, again, another reminder of this. Punishment is all around at every moment. You're always in jeopardy of losing someone you care about or yourself.
Speaking of losing someone we care about.
Oh, God.
The internet's favorite, Lyanna Mormont, catches a bad one from a giant. Now, look. This show
came in the blind side. Yeah, very tough.
That's the left tackle's fault. Yeah. This show is almost a victim of its own success at sometimes because things can get away from it in terms of characters can just take on massive levels of popularity or maybe not catch on the way that the creators wanted them to. I think a THEON is an example of someone that viewers have had issues with over the years and have maybe broken a little bit under the amount of THEON playing time we get.
Yeah.
Lyanna's the opposite, where I think that was a bit character, and it was just wow, this person's a pretty powerful screen presence, and we're gonna keep it going. This is not an uncommon end for teenagers in this land, though.
I gotta say, a lot of people died in this episode, right? That was the one where you were just oh, that got me.
Yeah.
That was not only the emotion of it, this really strong character who has played such a huge role in steering events to where they are now, but just the surprise of it. Got the smallest soldier on the battlefield got by a giant.
Yeah.
Who killed the giant also. That was great. It wasn't a canned death where it was so many wounds and now the slow-mo kicks in. It was that was a surprise.
I mean, if her name had been David, it couldn't have been more perfect, right? It was the absolute embodiment of the David versus Goliath battle that was playing out in front of us. Bad beat for House Mormont in this episode.
Losing everybody.
Basically, I mean, we don't know who's alive, but they didn't have many people to begin
Jerry
with.
Mormont, he was down in the crypts. He was just
everybody, safest place, by the way.
I got a real Macumber vibe from
Blue-Eyed
Giant, and one of the, I'm such a sucker for that scene with BRAN early in season 1 where Rob is chatting with him after an old Nan was reading him the stories, and Rob says, in essence, she once told me that the sky is blue because we live in the eye of a blue-eyed giant, and BRAN said, maybe we do. And it's always just felt like such the perfect encapsulation of BRAN's open mind.
Yeah, sure.
Where other characters, including Maester Luwin, who was magic isn't real, just lacked something that BRAN was ready to see the world differently. So I thought when that giant came in, I mean, it's not that they were actually going to do Macumber, but that was a nice little...
Underrated shouts to Dany flaming the field because they had more than one giant, but I guess that's the only one they got through.
They got through. And then that one got killed by a 13-year-old.
Yeah, and those things can do some damage.
Yeah.
So,
1-1 we saw when 1-1 finally went out. It was the eye shot, Lyanna, incredible in that final moment. And I like the parallels there between Lyanna and Arya because they've been linked in a lot of people's minds.
That's right.
And to see that kind of hand around the throat, but I'm still going to finish the job, conviction. Lyanna, I mean, she has a lot of iconic quotes, but I don't plan on knitting by the fire while men fight for me is an all-time chef's kiss girl power line. She was right.
Let me just say, where House Mormont, where's the bodyguards? She's down there in the yard, 50 feet between her and the nearest soldier who's supposed to be helping her, and she's just
At that point, it's pretty chaotic.
I don't care. House Mormont, stick by your girl. That's literally the future of the house.
Yeah, Jorah said that to her last
somebody
episode.
Stand next to her when she's doing stuff?
So we've got more Air Force stuff going on between Rhaegal, Drogon, Viserion, Blue Flames.
This was heart attack inducing. I think this might have been one of the first moments that I nearly shattered your hand during our shared viewing experience. I was gripping onto you for dear life. you literally could not convince yourself in that moment as a viewer that you knew what was going to happen. That's an amazing thing to be able to pull off. A truly amazing thing.
Also, and the shot of the two dragons dipping back down beneath
oh
the
my
cloud
God, like
line.
in the cloud, that break in the clouds, that was like, I was
beautiful.
thinking like,
gorgeous.
make me a poster of that. Like, I will put that on my wall. That was amazing.
Good back tap.
Yeah, we'll get back to
think
some
about it.
more dragon fighting, but I wanted to talk about one of my low-key favorite scenes in the entire episode, which was the Arya versus the Whites in the library.
Amazing.
Which this show just turned into Alien all of a sudden, and it was so breathtaking. And after the Lyanna death, I felt like, safe. Here we go. Like now, anything could happen in this episode, and I wasn't sure she was going to make it out of that
I wasn't sure
library
either.
alive. It was an absolutely amazing moment. There's a loud thud heard as the soldiers are asking to open the doors to the crypts. That was a pretty brutal moment, and it was an example of maybe that's why you're down in the crypts, because you guys didn't open the door, and you probably saved yourselves, but that was a really, really tough beat right there.
I liked it.
You liked it.
liked it
Why
too.
did you like it? Because you were like, that's exactly what they should be doing?
Yeah,
Like,
they have literally one responsibility, and it's to try to stay alive.
Well, it turns out that the crypts weren't that safe anyway, so it doesn't really matter. In the hallway, the Hound, BERIC, and Arya and Melisandre, they fight through the halls. BERIC got
Tough beat for my guy BERIC on his 7th or 8th death. Shouts to him. He had a long one.
6 resurrections that we know of.
Yeah, not too subtle. Gets pulled up against the door frame like this.
I loved this sequence.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely loved it. I thought it's almost impossible in real time now, just processing it without returning to it, to like track all the threads that they beautifully knit together there.
Yeah.
But those characters all have so much history with each other.
Yeah.
And, thinking back to season 3, one of the more quietly potent moments was Arya talking to BERIC and Thoros about resurrection.
Yeah, being
and
like, what about a man without a head?
Yeah.
Asking about her father. And this sense that permeates the entire story, and it's obviously a key part of Jon's burden moving forward, is like, well, why me? Why you?
Yeah.
Why not somebody else?
Yeah.
And obviously, BERIC and the Hound have history. They engaged in a trial by combat.
Really incredible loop closing there, where the
It's just
Hound like
amazing.
severed BERIC's arm like almost all the way off, and
Yeah.
then was brought back to life. And really, what was one of the most surprising moments in the show to that point.
When Arya and Melisandre had their first interaction, it was with the Brotherhood, when Arya was with BERIC after they had taken the Hound prisoner. There's a lot of connective tissue and through lines there. And of course, as recently as last episode, when right before Arya got that arrow range sex, which by the way did not affect her performance. She was ready to go. Some athletes struggle with sex the night before a big game.
Which?
What is this, boxing all of a sudden?
It's like high flying bird. This is a big thing in high flying bird. But the thing that she said to the Hound and BERIC was like, I'm not spending my last night on Earth with you miserable shits.
Yeah.
And they were all together when it counted.
Can you guys talk to me a little bit about the significance of the Arya Melisandre interaction?
Yeah.
In that room, because I think I know that my wires were pretty scrambled by that point, and it was obviously laden with a lot of references to past stuff that had happened in the show. You alluded to them in the beginning of the Talk the Thrones episode. This is hashtag Talk the Thrones if you want to reach out to us. And we're doing Raven Scroll, where we're kind of going through what was a very chaotic episode of Game of Thrones, but one of the best they've ever done.
Yeah.
And we're just knocking it out scene by scene here. Later on, we're going to be giving you our winners of the week. We'll be taking some of your questions, and we'll be giving some predictions for next week. But tell me a little bit about that Melisandre Arya interaction, because I thought, not even in terms of like, what did you think of it, basically?
I thought it was great. It was one of those that just really got me. So it's a callback to season 3. Melisandre arrives at the Brotherhood to take Gendry away for the
Needs that king's blood.
for the famed leech bleeding that's about to occur, and something about Arya's energy just captures Melisandre's interest. She grabs her face and stares into her eyes.
Well, and Arya challenges her when no one else does.
Yeah.
And she says, I see a darkness in you, and in that darkness, eyes staring back at me, brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes you'll shut forever, we will meet again. Would have been cooler if the blue eyes was last. Thinking ahead now, guys.
It was tonight.
Come on,
penny off.
But it was tonight, and just the callback to that was perfect.
Yes.
It was amazing. I also just loved the allusion to Syrio and Arya's water dancing training. Why does she begin to become a warrior in the first place? Jon gives her needle. Ned allows her to train. It's this acceptance that she's not going to just conform to the norm and the expectation that the world has cast down on her. Like, you're supposed to be a lady. And of course, what did she say to Ned? That's not me. And Syrio came into her life. And in the moment where he came out of it, though, I will never let go of Syrio being alive.
R.I.P. Syrio still alive theory.
I will never let go.
Rest in power.
And to hear his signature line, what do we say to the god of death? Not today. That is what he said to Arya when he stood and faced Meryn Trant and the other soldiers and let Arya escape. A sacrifice, if it was a sacrifice, that ultimately allowed Arya to go on and live and escape and become who she is.
And this is ultimately, I mean, different readers and viewers of the show and the books will have a different relationship to different plot lines, but I think that all of Arya's training in Essos, all of the trials that she went through to get back to home, wound up paying off in the end of this episode, right? Like, they were so significant, you know. Speaking
Absolutely.
of going through trials and paying off, Theon begins his defense of Bran and the Godswood while Bran is warging and the Whites begin to approach. There's also still this sky battle above Winterfell with the Night King storming the castle. And Rhaegal and Viserion are fighting and clawing at each other. I thought that was really cool, like the physics and visceral elements of like this battle in the air. Drogon swoops in, knocks the Night King off of Viserion, bites Viserion through the neck. Rhaegal falls to the ground with Jon. There was some concern here about Rhaegal's like landing and whether or not how safe it was.
He's messed up.
Yeah, I spent most of the episode slacking two things to our wonderful team here at Talk to Thrones. Did anyone see Ghost, and is Rhaegal okay?
Yeah.
Because he really took a couple shots there.
Yes.
Like, really, I mean, ultimately, the plot mechanic of that is getting Jon back on the ground so that he can then stare down the Night King, which we'll get to in a minute. But, I mean, how are these dragons okay? You know, they appear to both be in the trailer for next week, which is wonderful news, but Drogon shook off about, I don't know, 50 whites?
Yeah.
Also, Dany.
Yeah, that's tough. Should we talk about this?
We're not there yet.
Let's do it. So Dany,
Sorry, getting
Night
ahead of
King falls
myself.
to the ground. Dany is like, I'm gonna end this one shot.
Watch this,
Dracarys.
And, well, you know, no one has ever tried it. Bran told us
That's
last episode, no one had ever tried Dragonfire, straight, direct Dragon Flame on the Night King, and you could tell right away that it wasn't gonna work, right? Just by looking at the clock also, like, oh, this is not gonna work.
It was amazing, though.
It was just the visual of it was truly incredible, and when he missed with that spear as she flew away, my heart stopped because that was like it reminded me of when Shaq, this is for the NBA heads out there, when Shaq threw a punch at Brad Miller from behind, and for whatever reason, like an angel whispered into Brad Miller's ear and he twitched, and Shaq's punch missed.
Yeah.
And Brad Miller would have been a stain. And same for Drogon and Dany right there. Wow.
You know what it reminded me of? When he literally missed a javelin shot aimed at Drogon. We're all like interviewing Olympians. How did the Night King get so good? Like, my dude is 1 for 3.
Yeah.
Like, maybe even worse than that.
It's still like 40, you know, he's like from 3-point range, it's not bad.
He's living off his prospect ranking. Right. He's the Christian Hackenberg of Game of Thrones.
So Jon approaches a unburnt Night King and he thinks, all right, let's have it out one-on-one, you and me, but he redoes the hard home move, brings everybody up.
You coward.
I know, I hated that,
You coward, man. Fight it out.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Come on, dude. Really? You're gonna bring everybody up and now we're gonna fight it?
You're such a badass, just fight it.
No.
The response in the room was great because everybody's like, oh.
No. This was a perfect television moment. Here's why. It was a mashup of two of Jon's most iconic moments.
Bastards.
Yeah. It was his solitary charge at Battle of the Bastards and him staring down the Night King in the eye at Hardhome. It was perfect.
You know what I thought the Night King was going to do? Is he was going to take his 5,000 whites or whatever he had out there and like tie Jon up and carry him into the Godswood to make him watch as he kills Bran. That would have been savage, Night King.
Would have been
You lost again.
It also...
How did you even think of that?
That's what I thought was going to happen.
The way that they all went to get one white. Yeah. Bring him to King's Landing.
I thought that they were going to be like, let's grab him and bring him in.
So we at least get Lyanna back. We get Ed back.
Right.
We get the White Walkers.
Can I go back to the Jon Night King thing for 1 second, though,
yeah.
in terms of just the fact that we appear to be done with the Night King and just this nagging, well, are we really question that I think we at least owe ourselves the due diligence of exploring? Once again, the Night King chose not to kill Jon, as he has done every time. Now, he did go for him pretty viciously up in the air on the dragons. That's true. But he turned around and walked away. Maybe it's just like, okay, well, I'm gonna let my whites kill him for me, but he stared him in the eye at Hardhome and didn't kill him. He stared him in the eye at Frozen Lake Battle and didn't kill him. And he stared him in the eye here and he walked away.
Because?
And I don't know, I found myself thinking in that moment, okay, all this talk about Bran being his real target is not true, that it's Jon, and that this story is gonna come down at the end to a single combat, like these two facing off against each other, maybe this episode, maybe later. And that appears to not be the case.
Let's hit back to the Raven Scroll where we're going through the episode scene by scene. We're kind of wrapping up the episode here to some extent. The Whites approach Bran in large numbers, and I gotta say, great job, Ironborn.
They did it. They did their job.
I mean, Dothraki absolutely got gutted the first run out there. Unsullied, basically playing defense the entire time. Ironborn did a nice job holding those guys off.
Playing defense is how the Unsullied made their name in the first place. So I kind of like that as a nod to their roots, but.
So this is where everything seems to be falling apart. Jon's overwhelmed by Whites. Dany is on Drogon, swoops into burns a lot of them. She's grounded, and the Whites approach Drogon and stab him repeatedly. You know, we have
got to talk about this.
Yeah, so we had really extensive dragon battles throughout this episode, and we like to go to Jason from time to time to just get a deeper sense of the history of the books and the lore of Game of Thrones. We call it Higher Mysteries, and Jason's gonna tell us a little bit about dragon battles.
So what we saw here is basically what happens when dragons fight. It's sort of anticlimactic. It's a lot of grappling onto each other and clawing at each other's bellies and latching onto each other's necks. During the Dance of Dragons Civil War, which was caused by a succession crisis, that's when the realm saw most of the aerial battles that they saw. There were 20 dragons when they started. At the end, there was just like a handful of dragons, and most of them were really injured. The thing that interests me, and I think that will probably be germane considering the state we saw Rhaegal in after this, which was probably pretty injured, but not dead.
We do see him flying, it appears, in the trailer for next week.
Right. So
which is good news.
During the siege of Rook's Rest, there was a battle between three dragons. Sunfire, Vhagar, which was one of the original three dragons that came over in Aegon's invasion, was a huge...
Vhagar!
Anyway. And then Malys. And basically, long story short, Sunfire was... The three dragons crumpled to the ground, and Sunfire was just absolutely wrecked. And laid there for a long time, was kind of like, couldn't fly, couldn't do anything, and just laid there and was fed and then kind of disappeared. But I think, I do wonder if that's not what we're gonna see from Rhaegal. Just like ground-bound, can't fly for months or however long.
Yeah.
Load management, people have to come out and bring him goats. And maybe is okay, but will not fly for the
Well, I mean, we're going to get
term.
into this when we talk about what we think is going to happen next week, but you have to wonder now with 3 episodes left, how much time is going to elapse in between episodes? And if there will be any time elapsing in between episodes, because they've got to now turn around and go south.
Right.
So,
I just have to ask you to join me in a moment here of talking about how bad Dany is at this, and the dragon aspect of this. She knows her history. Like, she's heard that Higher Mysteries. We know this because when they enter the dragon pit in season 7, she has that actually quite moving moment with Jon where she explains, you know, they grew small. Like, we put them in this place. We chained them. We grew small, they grew small, and we grew small with them. So she understands the perils of mishandling dragon management, and yet she chained Rhaegal and Viserion in Meereen, waited way too long to find Rhaegal a rider, and now that she has given him a rider, it's somebody who might end up being her prime challenger for the Iron Throne. So, while I maintain that Jon is not interested in that, I think that the dragons both probably have to be healthy and well, because there's a chance, again, that the battle turns into a battle of Dany versus Jon at some point. And if one of Dany's dragons is on the other side of that, that's on her.
Yeah, also, like, landing, which...
Go into the air!
Hey, the flying is a great plus with the dragons. Let's keep them flying.
to stand up for Dany, I do think that she seems to be like, when John's like, how do you fly one of these? And she's like, you just kind of know. Like, I don't know if there's like an owner's manual for
John
a
really a
dragon,
natural, gotta
where
say.
she's just like, and
so many
and
things.
maybe it's kind of like, it's like a manual transmission. It takes a while to get it in, like the clutch pop,
Okay, that's
to get
fine.
it back up in the air.
That's fine. There's the army of the dead swarming all around you. You're on the ground for way too long. Once the whites begin to attack, take flight. It's just a note.
Fair enough.
We have some notes.
Fair
take
enough.
flight.
Yeah.
Inside the gates, we're going to go back to Ravenscroll now. We're going to just finish the end of this episode as a breakdown. Inside the gates, Jon is heading towards the Godswood. He fights off whites along the way. It's brutal. He sees Sam struggling. He sees Brienne struggling.
Sam.
The Ironborn running out of arrows. Come on, guys.
Well,
bring more than you think you need.
I think they
Yes.
well, they had a lot. But
not enough.
The people on the walls needed them. I think just listen. We ran into a resource issue. The forges are working overtime trying to provide arrows, dragon glass. Then you have like Arya coming in and being like, stop all the orders. I need my spear. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot
we
of
have
other.
no idea what Arya did to the production line.
There's a lot of other issues. The forge and everybody in the armory did their very, very best. They had like multiple
True.
barrels of arrows.
Yeah.
And you're just gonna run out at a certain
Rosie
point
the
of time.
Riveter is in there like, I have
Yeah.
all these orders to fill.
Right, and then
and you're
people-
saying you need this spear first?
it's like-
All right, I guess the Ironborn just aren't going to get that many arrows. Okay, so Theon grounded by a white. Outside of Winterfell, Dany and Jorah are fighting off whites together. Sansa and Tyrion
God.
embrace
That was
absolutely,
gorgeous.
that
gorgeous
was great.
moment. They both pull knives. Tyrion, I take it, was like, I'm going to go sacrifice myself
Right, I'm ready to
stop you.
Yeah.
What did you think it was a
I
suicide
thought
pact?
I thought it was maybe a slight callback to Battle of Blackwater when Cersei was ready to off everybody.
Right.
If they weren't going to win, just because they were like,
Forgot about that.
just because they were the looks
Almost poisoned Tommen on
almost
the throne.
very close to poisoning Tommen. I thought it was going to be like, okay, listen, if it's going to be like this, then let's do it. I thought it was a little bit of that.
That's interesting. I hadn't considered that. I like that now that you're saying it. I thought he was going to go give his life to try to save Sansa. They had, that wonderful conversation in this episode about basically like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Could it work for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their relationship has always been one of like the surprisingly resonant and touching things in the story. There's no reason for those two people to be kind to each other or to feel compassion toward each other, and yet they chose to. And that made a huge difference in both of their lives. And also, Sansa calling Tyrion out to his face at the beginning of the season gave him a little bit of the kick in the ass that he needed, you know? Like, he's like, wow, this is a person who used to think the world of me and is now basically telling me that I'm an idiot. That had an effect on him. I thought that scene was absolutely wonderful.
I liked it too.
Stay in the crypts. And one
No safer
person
place.
at this table wrote 6,000 words on the significance of the crypts in Game of Thrones.
Literally 6,000 words. I don't know what's wrong with me.
So, a bunch of dead Starks.
Yeah.
Who could have seen that coming?
Turns out the crypts aren't safe.
Are you kidding? Wow.
A bunch of dead Starks jump out of their coffins. Is there any significance to any of the Starks that we saw coming out? I mean, it wasn't like one of them was like, I'm Brad Stark.
One of them looked like Maester Luwin a little bit.
I thought so. We
But-
shouted that out.
It was just too hard to tell. That's the kind of thing I think we'll just have to rewatch. I mean, there's no reason that Maester Luwin should be in the crypts,
I mean,
right?
it looked like there was like a side portion where maybe other bones are buried, and they because they came out of like some wall portion.
So there
first.
was a lot of talk about whether we would see Rickon specifically, and like a visibly that's Rickon, and maybe now he can zig and zag now that he's a corpse way. But I was most nervous when the camera panned over Lyanna's tomb.
Yeah.
Also most excited, weirdly, because of the idea that Rhaegar's harp, proof of Jon's parentage, might have been in there. But
Still time for
again,
that.
like, not to oversimplify things, this is a complex story, but if you had to boil down the Night King to one line of essence, it's he raises corpses.
Yes.
Don't hide in the place full of corpses.
That
And
was
there's
just a shocking thing to overlook from the various really smart and experienced generals that we had on the side of humanity to be like, oh yeah, the bodies.
Yeah, I put this in my piece, but it did make me think of Littlefinger's iconic line from season 1, back when he was on accent number 1. The Starks, quick tempers, slow minds.
Yeah.
Like, no shade at our dudes, but really?
That's a thing that anybody could have come up with. Like Davos, BERIC. Anybody want to opine about the presence of the dead bodies in the crypts?
So they're not morticians. We
This
got
has
that.
been a thing in the books for a long time, where there are these passages, these quotes that seem like very portentous in terms of bodies rising. There's a Ned passage early on in the first book that I'll read very quickly. By ancient custom, an iron longsword had been laid across the lap of each who had been Lord of Winterfell to keep vengeful spirits in their crypts. The oldest had long ago rusted away to nothing, leaving only a few red stains where the metal had rested on stone. Ned wondered if that meant those ghosts were free to roam the castle now. He hoped not. And Jon routinely dreams of the crypts, which I think functions primarily as a symbol of how he's processing his identity in this sense.
Like
whether he belongs in the family, but he does have one dream where he's looking at these tombs and it's spirits rising. So this is was anticipated, but still ultimately very satisfying. All of our main characters who were down in the crypts lived.
Yes, and all the characters who we see in this montage, I believe, that's basically the Darkest Before the Dawn montage, where it looks like Theon and Brienne and Pod are pinned against a wall with like waves and waves. Sorry, Jaime, Brienne, and Pod are pinned against the wall with waves of whites coming at them. Sam seems like he's overwhelmed. Everybody looks like they're about to die. Bran turns to Theon, and the Godswood is just like, "You did okay, kid.
Right.
You did well." And he basically is like, the thing that you know you have to do is the thing I already know you are going to do, which is where we start to get into how much of this had Bran seen, how much of this played out exactly the way Bran saw it. Theon sacrifices himself to the Night King. To slow him down, I guess, a second so that Arya could get her running start for her 67-inch jump.
I have so many things here to talk about. Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Did you enter this episode remotely considering the possibility that either Jaime or Brienne would not die?
No, I thought we were 100% losing one of them. I thought.
Same.
I thought Brienne was going to die. I think Jaime has
I agree.
On the heels of the knighting.
First of all, let's not even forget Jaime and Brienne. Honestly, forget them. Grey Worm being alive is a shocker.
Yeah.
They can go see those
They're
beaches.
going to the beaches and not everybody.
Great
We're going.
news.
We're gonna make it. I got the tickets. Still good. We got time.
And that's why you don't pay for flight insurance,
that's why you don't pay for flight
You
insurance.
cannot live forever after all.
I'm telling you, non-refundables. You made fun of me, but it's gonna work now.
That's my prediction for the next episode. Is like Grey Worm slips on blood and dies down like a fall down the stairs. Sorry, this show makes me feel dark.
Theon?
Theon dies.
Okay, I'm gonna say it. I think that there is an argument that making us care about Theon is the greatest achievement in show history.
As of last week, you didn't care about him.
I know. That's why I'm saying it. I was so emotional watching that play out. Maybe that's just because of my general emotional state.
I think it's a testament to the two actors because that wordless scene where they're just looking at each other is really powerful. That said,
Alfie Allen is great.
It's whatever.
Well, here's the thing,
Theon.
though. One of the things
fine,
that
I
I
guess.
think we're reacting to is the fact that in almost every scene that we see of Theon when he's not getting just beaten to the ground or chopped to pieces or tortured or kicked out of houses or killing children or whatever he's doing.
Burning him.
Right. Saying,
Failing to
am I your
properly
brother?
behead Roderick.
But it's
Am I your brother now and always?
It typically has that interior Game of Thrones blocking and staging where you feel like he's giving this long speech and you're like, dude, we know. And we know your bit. This was different, like you're saying, man. It was like a quiet moment before this storm. It was action-packed. He showed his worth through behavior rather than just words.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a really effective end to this character.
I think we have all been on the record as saying that Theon was in essence beyond redemption, or whatever that looks like on the show. At a minimum, that we were not actively rooting for him. And I think a lot of fans of the show feel that way. In the series of scenes that he had in season 8, he saved Yara. Again, guard your ships better, but he saved Yara. He had really a truly beautiful reunion with Sansa, and he did absolutely everything he could to stand there for Bran. He paid the iron price.
Here's my argument against.
Against what?
Against Theon redemption. Against
I'm not necessarily saying he achieved it, just that I found myself more emotionally invested in the outcome there than I thought was possible.
So what was your argument against it?
My thing is what did he really do there at the end that anybody else couldn't have done? The cool thing about the Arya move is only she could have done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What did he really do?
I guess
that Beric could have done.
Right.
That Davos couldn't have done.
We don't know
Davos
other than the
shoot
Night
arrows,
King
but
kneeing him in the crotch. I don't really know what his special power would have been.
I think that's a fair point. I think it's ultimately not about his particular skill or prowess as a warrior and more about the potency of him making that choice. You know, that BRAN line about all of this being about you getting back here home. Well, what was Theon's great struggle the entire time? And obviously one that led him to make unforgivable choices. Yeah. It was, well, what is home for me? You know, that conversation between him and Jon in season 7, you don't have to choose. You can be a Greyjoy and a Stark. Yeah. Well, he chose to be a Stark at the end. And I found myself thinking a lot about that exchange between Theon and Maester Luwin in season 2, after Theon has basically lost Winterfell and is surrounded by the troops that will ultimately learn belong to Ramsay. And Luwin says to him, you're not the man you're pretending to be. Yeah. And Theon says, you may be right, but I've gone too far to pretend to be anything else. This choice showed that that wasn't true.
Great point. Let's remember Maester Luwin, a wonderful, warm-hearted man who taught the Starks the best that he could. He died at the foot of that weirwood because of the actions of Theon.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because of the actions of Theon, he died inches from where Bran Stark sat in his chair just now in that episode.
So just to conclude Raven Scroll, which is our recap of this episode, if you want to reach out, it's #TalkTheThrones. We're talking this episode, this incredible episode of Game of Thrones. We get one of the iconic moments of this series, which is Arya leaping into the air, getting caught in mid-air by the Night King, dropping the knife from one hand to the other and stabbing him in the stomach. We've talked about this. It was incredible.
Great move.
Exploding ice for the White Walkers, just a drop down for the Whites. Viserion dies.
Yeah.
And every important character on this show is still alive.
Except Jorah.
Except Jorah.
I guess now we know what all of the jumping out of windows in Braavos was about for Arya. She was just working on her vertical leap that whole time.
Vertical and horizontal, because she covered some real ground. Incredible.
What does this mean ultimately? We don't have to answer this now. It's just something to maybe think about for the savior prophecies on the show.
Yeah.
You know, for the prince who was promised, for Azor Ahai. I mean, Jon at the end of the day was not the one who killed the Night King, and neither was Dany. I really like that.
Melisandre didn't seek out Jon when she came back.
That's right. Yeah. So does that mean that that Arya is ultimately the one fulfilling this? Or I think a fun, and maybe more happens in the next 3 episodes that ultimately clarifies who is that savior. But I think a direction that I would really enjoy is, you know, it's true for all of us, someone who loves the story and spends a lot of time thinking about it, is basically rejecting a clear reading of that prophecy and saying, well, ultimately it was all of them together.
Well, we could talk a little bit about that as we go on with this episode of Talk the Thrones. #TalkTheThrones if you want to reach out to us. Obviously, we lost a lot of characters this episode, so let's take a second to remember them in memoriam. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the characters that we lost today. We each chosen someone that is special to us in our own little way. Mal, let's go to you first with Jorah Mormont.
Okay. This was devastating. I think it's fair to say. Jorah, complicated man, not a traditional hero in any respect, and that ultimately is part of why he was so compelling to us. Jorah did sincerely terrible things in his life. He sold men into slavery. And when he initially entered Viserys and Dany's service, he spied on them for quite a while to try to earn a pardon. Not a perfect guy. Jorah, very emblematic, as he will be the first to tell you of the idea that your choices and your decisions do not have to define you forever. The next choice that you make can make a difference too. The one thing that he said was that he always wanted to get home. You know, when people asked him, Dany asked him, what do you want? I want to go home. And he got there, and he got that tiny bit of absolution, whatever he could, last episode from Lyanna in the form of her saying, I wish you good fortune. I'm getting really emotional. And Sam handing him Heartsbane, a Valyrian steel sword, when of course his birthright was Longclaw, a Valyrian steel sword that he had to give back, that he left behind when he fled into exile because he knew that he had shamed his family, shamed his father. And when he took Heartsbane from Sam, he said, I'll wield it in his memory to defend the realms of men. And he did. He did. And he defended Dany. He died for Dany. It was beautiful.
It is beautiful. It was. I know it was a character that meant a lot to you.
I love him.
We lost another Mormont in this episode.
Tough beat for House Mormont.
Let's talk a little bit about Lyanna, Jason.
Lyanna, I once tweeted very recently that if you die, I will burn down this world. I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
But I will say Lady of Bear Island had an outsized role in events. She sent that fearsome letter to Stannis saying, we recognize no king but the king in the north whose name is Stark, was one of the most dedicated supporters of House Stark. Obviously, her dedication to the cause really shamed other northern houses into supporting Jon, was crucial in the events that led to Jon being named king in the north, dunked on the Glovers like 15 times. Just an incredible warrior, daughter of Mage Mormont, who died at the Red Wedding. You see her, she was also present when Robb Stark was named king in the north, another fearsome fighter for Bear Island. Bear Island just really punching above their weight. Who knows what the future holds for House Mormont, but Lyanna went out fighting a dead giant that was literally 5 times her size, and she killed it. Lyanna Mormont, you crushed it. You freaking crushed it. They should build a statue of you in the yard at Winterfell where your body fell.
May you live forever.
May you live forever.
She will.
Jon Stark, aka Aegon Targaryen, owes you everything.
Yeah.
Owes
he
you
really
everything.
does. I'm going to send out the Night King.
Shouts to my guy.
Really
Great
special
choice.
character to me. We don't really often think about the Elaine May level wit of this show, but Night King really encapsulated this sense of humor. No, I'm just kidding. He was the existential threat of this show, and there's a degree to which I feel like his absence will be felt going forward. There was always an element of, I don't know if you want to say like magic or fantasy to this show.
Well, yeah, it's a fantasy story.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, obviously. But there was also, there was always, like, an element of, like, political intrigue
Sure.
and military maneuvering and stuff like that. But the Night King showing up is... The Night King's arrival was basically this signal that there was this more existential threat, this more mythological threat somewhere across the border, you know, in the north of the wall there. And I thought it was a thing that really made this show, like, an incredibly special, magical experience every week.
Yeah.
So I think he will be missed in some ways. I don't know how necessarily if Cersei has enough juice to like get us through the next 3 episodes.
I think the question of how quickly the human alliances just disintegrate now that they're not united by this common foe, because, you know, Jon, very like, I'm running for president 2020, like he has a stump speech, right?
Right.
And it was
The Night King.
the Night King.
Looked into his eyes, man.
Looked right into those eyes.
Those blue peepers, I looked into them.
It was the unifying force, the rally cry that united all of the realm, aside from obviously Cersei and her troops and a few other key parties. That's gone now.
Does he have a second issue?
Yeah.
That is gone.
Yeah.
What else is on
The
his
Iron
platform?
Bank, it's bad.
Well, yeah, and now he's gonna have. This is where we start to get into who's the heir, right? And who actually deserves to sit on that throne, and does he want to sit on the throne?
So you said, I think he does not want to sit on the throne. I think the question will be, does he think ultimately that Dany is fit to? Because Jon is a very reluctant leader. That's why he is such a great fantasy hero. And he loves Dany, still, right now, even after everything. You know, the way that he shouted out for her in the battle when he thought that she was in jeopardy, it was like a quietly very touching moment. You asked if Cersei can sustain 3 episodes. I'm not sure she's going to.
Really?
I think they might get rid of Cersei and then have to fight each other. I know I keep returning to this, it just really feels like that's where this season is heading. And maybe I'm not giving Dany enough credit for the pure heroism that she displayed throughout this episode when it actually counted. But I don't think that every conversation that happened in the first 2 episodes should be forgotten just because they banded together in this one. Sam saying to Jon, well, maybe she shouldn't be, like, that's real. That happened. That's still there. The look on Jon's face when he told Dany the greatest truth of his life and really in the entire story, and her response was, that means you're a threat to me. You could see on his face that he was like, oh my God, she only cares about that, about power. And she cares about other things too. The animating principles in her life have been justice. But don't forget who her father is. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think she gets kind of a bad rep. Just a little bit of a bad rep. She's gotten bad advice. She's in a foreign land, even though she would like to, you know, part of her stump speech is, I'm returning home. blah, 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 blah. She did not grow up there. Is not aware of the fault lines. The people that she hired to make her aware of the fault lines, Tyrion, who his whole job was, hey, I know the Western Lords. Like, I know them. I know my family. I'm going to be able to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. He's wrong.
He's got to prove it in the next couple of weeks.
And he was 100% wrong. So I think that Dany, listen, she's been floundering. She made some mistakes. I think, like, burning Dickon, probably a bad move. That said, I think they figure it out. Like, Song of Ice and Fire. I think that Jon, the reluctant leader, we've just illustrated why he's, like, very brave, exceptionally good, not a super great planner. Dany, the fire, gets a little hot-headed sometimes and burns a person maybe she shouldn't have burned, but I think together they can kind of balance each other out, and I think that that's what the realm needs going forward.
Counterpoint, Jon is ice and
we
fire.
can keep talking about Dany when we get into like predictions for next week, and we can keep talking about what all this means. We lost Ed, we lost Viserion. Any last words from Viserion? Melisandre, any final words for any of these?
Tough end for Viserion. He deserved a lot better than what he got.
Yeah, well, it's like Viserion was dead already. For me, it's like I had moved on emotionally. I had moved on from
once you go blue.
Once you go blue, you never come back.
Yeah.
I had moved on emotionally from Viserion a long time ago, so not sad to see him go. The rest of them, obviously, Melisandre, Dolores, Ed, Theon, BERIC, Jorah, the Night King, like, that was, I'm going to miss them. Viserion, it's like, listen,
all right,
I moved on.
I like the symmetry of, not to get into like too specific book spoiler territory here, but there's a real parallel between what happened to BERIC here and who he tries to save, who he saves, who he gives his life for in the books.
One last thing. Did they kind of wimp out? They kind of wimped out. We touched on it when we were like, was Jaime
should there be more names on this eulogy list?
I kind of think yes. Like, listen, I'm delighted to see everyone who survived, that they did survive. But when you look in that courtyard and it's like Jaime, Podrick, Brienne, Grey Worm, and it's just them that managed to fight off 1,000, 5,000, 50,000 whites, and there's not like 5 random soldiers around them who are also made it. I was like, man, I'm just shocked right now.
Yeah, I was shocked as well. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about winners of the week, and we're going to talk about what might happen next week. We'll take some of your questions. We'll be back in just a second.
Check out The Ringer for all your Game of Thrones needs. Every Monday, listen to The Watch with Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald as they dive into the cultural impact of Game of Thrones.
It appeals to diehard genre people, but it also has leached into the public conversation.
Every Tuesday, Mallory Rubin and Jason Concepcion take your Game of Thrones questions live on Ask the Maester.
This sucks, guys.
Real hard ass. Not a fun dude.
Every Wednesday, Binge Mode guides you through a deep dive look at each Game of Thrones episode.
You feel exactly the opposite about the Mountain, who is still with us, though in undead form.
Check out more coverage on The Ringer with written recaps, Ask the Maester columns, episode exit surveys, and the brand new Pre-Capitals podcast dropping every Friday. So be sure to tune in all week on TheRinger.com.
Welcome back to Talk the Thrones. We are here live on Twitter. I'm Chris Ryan. This is Jason Concepcion. This is Mallory Rubin. We're talking about The Long Night, the 3rd episode in the 8th season of Game of Thrones. We're going to do our Fire and Ice Winner of the Week presented by Wendy's. You can get a free small Frosty when you order delivery of a Wendy's spicy chicken combo using the promo code HouseWendy's on DoorDash's delivery app. Guys, Jason.
Yes.
Winner of the Week.
I mean, Arya's the easy one, but I'm going to go the whole team. This is a team effort.
Yeah.
The rest of humanity. Let's not forget the Dothraki who died in their tens of thousands to buy humanity.
I thought you were going to say in 10 seconds.
15 seconds of extra time. Let's not forget all the Unsullied that fell. Ed, BERIC, everybody, Theon. It required the efforts of every single person for Arya to come in at the 1-yard line and take out the Night King. So I'm giving my trophy to the humans.
It's Arya. I am also very pro it was all of them together, but to the point you made a few minutes ago about wow, a lot of people sure did actually make it out alive. If Arya's literally a second later, that's not the case. She saved all of them. We learned in Frozen Lake Battle that if you kill a walker, all of the whites that he created fall, which meant as our characters deduced, that if you kill the Night King, that's it for everyone. And she made that happen. Just incredible courage. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Arya, for all of the killing that we've seen, this is her first battle. This was her first proper battle. And she had moments of absolute terror throughout the course of the night where it would have been very easy for a lesser, not only soldier, but a person of less character and conviction to continue to soldier on. And I think this season has been just such a highlight for Arya, for a lot of people, but for Arya in particular, to show us that all of these parts of who she is are still there, and not one of them doesn't have to dwarf the other. It's great stuff.
Any losers of the week?
Davos for not getting to kill Melisandre.
He was about to do it.
He was like,
he was walking up
I'm
and
coming
like,
for you.
Are you gonna?
I think the Night King is ultimately the loser.
Yeah, the big,
Yes,
big,
of
big
course,
L for
of
the nighty.
Let's get into Three-Eyed Raven.
Nighty.
Three-Eyed Raven is our look ahead to next week's episode and beyond, perhaps. We've talked a lot about what the Night King's death means to this show, but obviously for the scenes from next week, we're going back, at least in part, towards King's Landing. And we're gonna have to figure out who rules what remains of the North, who they pledge their allegiance to, and what their sort of orientation is towards King's Landing and the South.
Cersei had a big smile on her face
Yeah.
in the scene for next week.
She probably, if I had to guess, got word that the North won, so we're not gonna all die by whites, but they lost
easier
most
foe.
of their armies.
Also, she's hammered.
Yeah.
She is slammered on a Pinot.
Yeah.
And can barely stand up. So she's having a great time regardless.
She also appears to be like sincerely getting along swimmingly with Euron.
Yeah.
I think that, we've spent a lot of time debating, the Valankara theory and the prophecy in the books, which is decidedly not on the show, and this idea that Jaime, little brother, could be the one to kill Cersei, and what might lead him to do that. I think a lot of people really thought that Brienne dying in this battle would be just that final nudge he needed. I think if they go back and he is faced with the fact that Cersei is pretending that his baby is Euron's, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it for her, which I, for one, am excited to see.
Yeah.
I am glad that we saw both dragons appear to be in the air, hopefully returning to form. It appeared again that we saw just a little quick shot of Ghost. I'm very happy. I'm excited to see what else he does. Again, I just think I'm most interested in the human relationships at this point and how long the alliances that have formed hold.
Here's what I think. My prediction is, let's get the nachos ready, get the wings ready, because it's time for the Clegane Bowl. Let's get it.
Yes.
They promised it to us last season, and we're gonna get it this time.
Yes.
Can't
It
wait.
has to happen.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, I think that I'm most interested to see. Sansa was on the verge of getting eaten alive by zombies and was still dissing Dany down in those crypts.
I loved it.
She's about it. She's about that life.
So
loved
she's
it.
not going to leave the crypts in a better mood. The whole clarifying thing was supposed to be it's us versus the dead.
Yeah.
Let's put aside our differences. Here come the differences.
Exactly.
I do think, though, if I agree with all of that there will be those fault lines are not going away. At the same time, if Sansa doesn't come out of those crypts with a sincere appreciation
A new lease on life.
for the work that Dany and her troops put in, that would also be a shame. She can't just be okay, yes, you did great. You took out thousands of whites in the field before they could climb over the walls, but also now you got to. She has to. There also has to be an appreciation for the work they put in.
But she can do that because it's literally what she did in their last conversation. She got to the point where she was able to say, I should have thanked you the moment you arrived. Also, what about the North?
Yeah.
That doesn't go away. And I think, frankly, we have to really start considering the fact that Sansa is the one on the throne at the end of this, if there is a throne.
Well,
I personally do not believe there will be a throne, but
I think, listen, we haven't been super critical, but I think one of the things that I kind of don't love is Dany saying to Yara previous season, yeah, you can ask and maybe we'll figure out an independent
this
kingdom
nation
within.
state thing you got.
And her not even bringing that up, just basically forgetting it in the conversation with Sansa.
Yeah.
So what happens vis-a-vis that?
Right.
Does that come back up? Did she just forget about it?
That sounds like a loose end.
Yeah.
That sounds like something we will be discussing on our mid-season show, which we are doing on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll be talking about some of the loose ends that we still need to solve to tie up before the end of Game of Thrones, which is 3 episodes left. For Jason Concepcion, from Mallory Rubin, I am Chris Ryan. We will be back with you next Sunday after the 4th episode of Game of Thrones. Check out the watch, binge mode, all the stuff on the Ringer with Game of Thrones. We will be with you next week. We will be with you Thursday, and then we will be with you Sunday.
R.I.P. Jorah.